Hey y'all! This week we are talking about things that we are personally passionate about, and I want to share my love of crafting, specifically sewing and quilting, with you. If you are in my class, then I have told you at some point in time that my favorite sport is arts and crafts. I cannot draw or paint very well, so if you've ever heard me say I don't art, that's what I mean by that. However, I love to create, and I love seeing other people's creations. Knowing the amount of dedication and heart that goes into each project makes it beautiful and important. All of my grandmothers have been very artistic. One may enjoy painting while another prefers to crochet or knit, but they all sew, and they've instilled a love of sewing in me. When I was little, both my grandmothers, my dad's mom and my mom's mom, made me vests and costumes. Some of these vests were the same vest, but they almost had like competitions to see who could make them more festive. They made costumes for Halloween and school plays, not just for me, but for my siblings, my cousins, everybody. My favorites included a toga when my sixth grade class studied Greek mythology, and Madeline for literary Halloween when I was in college. These projects are not easy, and they're not started and finished in one sitting. Many of them take hours that turn into days, weeks, or months to complete. Each moment spent making a vest or costume or blanket for someone else is a moment spent thinking about that person. Sure, not every moment I spend sewing or crocheting is spent thinking about the person the item will be given to, but part of that time is, and the elements that go into that piece have that person in mind. I wonder what fabrics I'm going to use, what colors, how big it's going to be, is it going to fit, will it fit their personalities? And knowing that these vests, dresses, costumes, and quilts from my grandmothers were made with me in mind makes them so much more valuable to me. Quilts are traditionally made to keep people warm. In this day and age, why would I put hours of time into making a blanket when I can go to the store or buy one? Or while we're under quarantine, order one online. In some cases, the materials needed to make a quilt cost more altogether than just buying a pre-made blanket. And as I've mentioned, projects that show someone's heart and dedication are beautiful and valuable. A handmade quilt isn't going to have an identical mate sitting right beside it on the store shelf, and all of those hand-picked materials and hours of work tell a story. So let me show you a quilt my Nana made for me. I call it my calendar quilt. And each square, or block is what different pieces of a quilt are called, represents a month of the year, and the borders each symbolize a season. If I zoom in on a specific block, you can see the time and detail that went into making each one. So I admire how my grandma chose certain fabrics for the trees and the skies. She picked each character's dress, and she even went to like this extra mile to sew on buttons or appliques to make each block unique. My favorite is probably the December block, because if you look, she put Santa Claus in the window. There are buttons on the Christmas tree as ornaments, and there's a star at the top. There is even, if you lift the hem of the little girl's dress, there are pom-poms on her bedroom slippers, which I just think makes it so unique and special. And if I did a Google image search for a Sunbonnet Sue calendar quilt, which is what the pattern is, I'll find a plethora of quilts made with that same pattern. And they're gorgeous. They're absolutely beautiful. But not a single one of them looks exactly like mine. And that's what makes mine important and special to me. If you have one of those, then it was made with you in mind. And that's what makes it important to you. And I know I'm waxing poetic about this one blanket. But this is the whole purpose of the Personal Passion Project. I'm speaking both to entertain and inform. So now that I've shown you how creative my grandmothers are, and told you that I don't art, let me show you how all of this relates to crafting or sewing as my personal passion. When I was little, maybe 5 years old, my Nana and I made a quilt together. Her mother-in-law, so my great-grandmother, had sewn these cute quilt squares. My Nana gave them to me to lay out in the middle of the floor in any order that I wanted. I could rearrange them as long as they were like 3 by 4. So we had 12 blocks. Actually, we had 13. We used one to make a pillow. So we had our 12 blocks, and I laid them out however I wanted to. And once they were in the proper order according to me, we sewed them together. We sewed them together, literally. I sat on my grandma's lap at the sewing machine, and we pieced the quilt together. And then she showed me how to sandwich the quilt top with the batting and the backing and stitch together this giant piece of fabric that was bigger than me to make a blanket. And then, like I said, we had one block left over, so we used that to make a pillow. I played a part in that project. I made something. And I thought that that was so cool. Just the ability to create something. And if you are into Legos or construction, if you're into drawing, painting, you're playing a part in creation. And I think that's something that makes art so special, is that each piece is unique and each piece tells its own story. When I was in high school, that same grandmother, my Nana, gave me a sewing machine for Christmas. And I can skip over all the details about the projects I started and have never finished or completely screwed up. But I will tell you that those things happened, because that's part of the process. There's this adage about quilting that you keep your machine close and your seam ripper closer. A seam ripper is like this little blade, I'll show you a picture, that's used to cut out any threads or seams that you mess up while sewing and you want to redo them. The project I'm working on right now, I've used my seam ripper, it feels like, more than I've used my actual sewing machine. But I like crafting because it feels good to make something. Some things that I've made include small quilts and aprons and keychains, and like I said, I'm working on a rug right now. So sitting at my sewing machine is time for me to focus on creating something with love. Sewing has become a hobby more than a necessity in our society. And it's a hobby that I'm happy I'm interested in, and I want to continue learning about and making things. I'm passionate about this topic because of my family's connection to crafting, especially to sewing and quilting, but my grandmothers have also taught me how to crochet. So I will make things with yarn sometimes too. But because this is an activity all my grandmothers have invested their time in and spent time showing me how to do, my perspective is one of adoration. There's a story in every single stitch, whether it was done by hand or sewn on a machine. I'm so excited that I've got to share my part of my family's stories with you and something that I'm passionate about, and I can't wait to see what you are passionate about.